The conference room smelled faintly of fresh leather and polished oak, the kind of place where men in suits decided futures with a flick of a pen. At the far end of the long table sat Edward Langston, a billionaire CEO known for his ruthless business sense and cold smile. He flipped through the resume in his hands, his lips curving upward in amusement. "Really?" Edward said, his voice dripping with mockery. "This is your resume? You were a mechanic, a delivery driver, and then a part-time janitor? And now you want to work for my company?" He leaned back in his chair and let out a sharp laugh, the kind that could cut through skin. Across from him sat Daniel Carter, a man with calloused hands and tired eyes. He was in his late 30s, his shirt a little too worn, his shoes scuffed. He had no expensive degree, no corporate background, and he knew what he looked like in that room, a man out of place. But he had something the others didn't. A burning will to survive, and a little girl waiting for him in the reception area who was his entire reason for being alive. Daniel clenched his fists under the table but didn't respond to the insult. He had heard worse before. He had swallowed humiliation for years just to keep food on the table. He was used to being underestimated. What Edward didn't know was that every line on that resume wasn't just a job, it was a fight, a lesson, and proof that Daniel never gave up. "Sir," Daniel said quietly, "I know I don't have the kind of background you usually hire. But what I do have is grit. I learn fast. I don't quit. Give me a chance, and I promise I won't let you down." Edward smirked, unimpressed. "Everyone says that. But you see, Daniel, this is a billion-dollar company. Not some charity case." He pushed the resume aside like it was garbage. "I don't hire janitors to run my operations." Daniel's jaw tightened, but before he could respond, the door creaked open. Tiny footsteps padded across the polished floor, and a soft, innocent voice broke the heavy silence. "Daddy, my shoe broke," said a little girl, barefoot, holding one torn sandal in her hand. Edward looked up in surprise. The girl had big brown eyes, hair tied in two uneven ponytails, and cheeks still round with childhood innocence. She couldn't have been more than 6. She walked straight to Daniel, placing her small hand in his, her eyes filled with trust and love. Edward's laughter died in his throat. The room shifted. For the first time in years, the CEO felt something crack inside his chest. Daniel's face softened instantly, his tough exterior melting as he knelt before his daughter. "Emily," he whispered, brushing her hair from her face, "I told you to wait outside." "But Daddy, they said we can't sit there without shoes," Emily mumbled, her little lip trembling. Daniel closed his eyes. That moment of vulnerability, of shame, pierced him deeper than Edward's ridicule ever could. He looked at his daughter, then at the CEO, his voice low but steady. "This is why I'm here. I don't care about your laughter, your judgment. I'm here for her. I'll do any job, start at the bottom, scrub floors if I have to. But I won't stop until she has a life better than this." Edward's chest tightened. Something about the way Daniel said those words, the weight of love in them, hit him harder than he expected. He thought of his own past, of the son he had once neglected while chasing money, a boy who no longer spoke to him. Emily climbed into Daniel's lap, resting her head against his chest. "It's okay, Daddy. We don't need this job. We have each other." The innocence of her words hung in the air like a dagger. Edward turned his gaze away, trying to swallow the lump rising in his throat. His empire, his billions, his power. None of it had ever given him what this man had in his arms, unconditional love. Edward leaned forward, his voice lower, softer. "Tell me, Daniel, what would you do if I gave you this chance?" Daniel looked him straight in the eyes. "I'd work harder than anyone you've ever hired. Not for the money, not for the title, but for her. Because failure isn't an option when little hands depend on you." The room went silent. Edward stared at the resume again, this time not seeing a string of meaningless jobs, but a story of resilience. Each role represented a man who never gave up despite the odds. A man who fought to keep going. A man who, unlike many with polished degrees, understood the true meaning of responsibility. Finally, Edward cleared his throat. "Come back tomorrow at 8 a.m. sharp. You'll start in operations. I'll give you 3 months to prove yourself. Don't make me regret it." Daniel blinked, stunned. He opened his mouth to thank him, but Emily beat him to it. She smiled her gap-toothed smile and said, "Thank you, mister. My daddy's the best in the world." For the first time in a long time, Edward Langston smiled back, genuinely, not the cold smirk he was known for. Weeks turned into months, and Daniel kept his promise. He was always the first to arrive and the last to leave. He didn't complain about the tough tasks, he solved problems no one else wanted to touch. He listened, learned, and outperformed employees who thought themselves smarter. And all the while, Emily would sometimes wait for him in the lobby, drawing pictures or reading books. The staff began to adore her, and whispers spread through the company about the single dad who never stopped trying. Edward watched closely. Each time Daniel succeeded,